Dragon Ninja BYOKA, I love that name by the way, is a game that clearly draws heavy inspiration from Ninja Gaiden. But does it do justice to the classic action platformer, or is it better off staying buried in obscurity? You start off with a cutscene. Makes sense considering the game's inspiration. You are a dragon ninja, and I mean that quite literally. You know, the phrase dragon ninja gets tossed around a lot, but in this case you are quite literally a dragon who is also a ninja. I can't believe it took someone this long to make a game about that. Your master is killed by the evil serpent Zangul, who then steals an artifact and teleports to the future with the goal of making everything undefined by defining everything by zero. I have to say, as a former math teacher, I love that concept. You follow him to modern day to embark on a bloody quest for revenge. The problem is, he has been in the future for 10 years, so he has had plenty of time to prepare for you. I enjoyed the story here. It is told through cutscenes, like Ninja Gaiden, but you also meet characters in the levels that further advance the story. It was a nice ode to that classic style of storytelling, and it was just enough to keep it interesting without being obtrusive. As soon as the game begins, you immediately feel that sweet, sweet Ninja Gaiden nostalgia. The first level is a city street, and as soon as you start moving around, you could feel the parallels to Ryu Hayabusa. He runs just like Ryu, he jumps just like Ryu, he slashes just like Ryu, he even clings to walls just like Ryu. As I first began the game, I was really enjoying it. It appeared to be a pretty competent Ninja Gaiden clone. There are lots of thuggish enemies, and when you slash them, they fall down in a bloody pile of mess, instead of just mysteriously exploding like they do in the classic franchise. You get to the first boss, and it's overall a pretty poor battle, to be honest. You have 3 lives before you have to restart each level, and the boss health meter does not refill when you die until you have to continue. So I just kind of spam slashing him without using any real strategy to come out on top. When the second level started, the game took a shift into something different. It got pretty tough pretty quick, which I guess is something you would expect from a game that wants to be Ninja Gaiden, but almost took on a more precision platformy Meat Boy feel. There were large jumps and spikes sprinkled throughout the levels that kill you instantly. The emphasis became far more on navigating all these tricky jumps than it did on slicing and dicing through enemies. In fact, many of these parts didn't really have any enemies. It was just about getting through some difficult precision platforming challenges. Like this part here, you get this fan that blows you up into spikes. You have to swerve around them as you get pushed up. I must have died a million times before I finally completed it. I think it was this very part that made me realize that I am not just playing another Ninja Gaiden clone. Instead, what you get here are a whole bunch of bite-sized levels. Most of these you'll be able to complete in under 2 minutes, but expect to die a ton as you try each one. Some of them have a checkpoint in the middle. Hitting a checkpoint will give you 3 more lives and let you start from there. But if you're out of lives, it's back to the beginning. None of these levels were super long, so it never got really frustrating, but there were definitely parts that I had to replay a ton before I finally made it through. The level variety here is just spectacular. You get to explore a spider-infested cave on a minecart, run along a train, and what is honestly one of the most fun train levels I've ever played. The enemies swarm you everywhere. You get to scale a mountain and a tower, explore trap-filled laboratories, and a few other awesome set pieces, most of which are really well done. This is the kind of game where every second you are on edge. You're always just a hair away from dying, and the game is constantly throwing new things at you. All of them are well done and exceedingly challenging. There's also some gameplay mechanics that really set it apart from what you might expect. There are these orbs littered all throughout the environment. Hitting them causes a bunch of different effects, such as propelling you forward or up, freezing enemies, and refilling your dash. They become a pivotal part of progressing through the levels and add another layer of challenge to the platforming. You also get a few new moves as the game progresses. You get a dash that is invincible, so it's useful for combat. You can also dash once in the air in any direction, and that would become absolutely necessary later in the game. I was really impressed by all the creative ways the game forced you to use the dash in order to proceed. In addition to that, you get these little tendrils that serve as a grappling hook. The game is just constantly throwing new things at you. Between the upgrades, the dynamic levels, there's never a moment where you're bored. They do a really nice job of sprinkling in story elements just to give you a second to catch your breath, which you will definitely need. When I compare this game to Meat Boy, I am not being hyperbolic. This game is extremely tough, and you get a boss at the end of every world. I mentioned earlier that the first level boss was a total snooze fest, but then there are some really cool boss battles later on, like this one here. I just thought the perspective here was so much fun, and I've never seen anything like it in a 2D platformer. You gotta take down this helicopter while this little mutant is chasing you, destroying the cars that are serving as your platforms. There's machine gun fire, homing missiles, thugs, and it's just a totally intense battle and something very unique. I've talked pretty highly about this game, but that doesn't mean it's not without its flaws. I think my biggest issue with it is the sprint button. By holding down L1, your character moves a little faster and jumps a little farther. The thing is, you need this extra speed and height to do just about everything, so you are constantly, and I mean quite literally, constantly holding down this button. As if you are not, you will not be able to make the jumps. It just makes it physically uncomfortable to play, and the designers really should have just made the sprint your default speed, because there is really never a reason to not sprint. Also, sometimes the sprint button makes it so your jump button does not work, meaning you miss a vital jump and die. I know we all like to blame our controls when we die, but there were legit times where I missed really easy jumps, and I was definitely hitting the button. If it was once or twice, I'd own it, but it happened far more frequently than that. Not to say it always happens, but it was enough to notice. I don't really know why. There's also a bunch of parts where you're just kind of blind leaping, and you'll just fall to your death. The camera does not do a good job of showing you where you need to go, so you absolutely will experience some cheap deaths figuring things out. It's not too bad once you learn the levels, but it's just bad game design. You should always know exactly where you're going, and so when you die, it's your fault. Not because you took a blind leap of faith, and that faith was misplaced. Those criticisms aside, I have to say, I really fell in love with this game. I went into it just trying to find a fun Ninja Gaiden clone to keep me busy until Ragebound releases, but I got an experience that was so much more. It was so tough in a way that I wasn't expecting, but also extremely rewarding. It's just one of those random indie hidden gems that no one has ever heard of, and I really fell in love with it. I don't know that it's for everybody. It is definitely extremely challenging, and I mean that. It is extremely challenging. And the control flaws hold it back a little bit. I can see some players getting frustrated with the blind jumps and having to constantly hold down the L1 button while your finger cramps. But if you can get past those, there's a lot to enjoy here. It's very similar to Ninja Gaiden, harder than Ninja Gaiden in my opinion, but also unique enough to really set it apart. If you want to see what happens when Ninja Gaiden becomes a precision rage platformer, definitely check out this game. Hopefully you fall in love with it as much as I did.